Comfort is a quiet predator. It doesn't chase you down alleys or kick in your door. It waits. It sets up a soft chair, lowers the lights, hands you a screen, and whispers that you be earned at peace, that you've worked hard enough, suffered enough, waited long enough. And most men listen. They sink into it. They dissolve into routines that feel good in the moment and hollow in the long run. Semen retention. Whether you treat it as discipline, experiment, or personal code, has a strange side effect. It rips the cushions off that chair. Suddenly, the part of you that loves comfort is exposed, irritated, restless, and loud. That's the showdown. When you remove the easiest escape valve from your nervous system, your mind doesn't go quiet. It gets honest. The habits you use to numb yourself don't disappear. They stand up and demand attention. The body is used to quick rewards, easy dopamine, frictionless relief. Dopamine is the brain's anticipation chemical, the thing that says, do this again. When you starve it of cheap hits, it starts scanning your life like a harsh auditor. It asks why you hate your job, why your body feels heavy, why your goals are still theoretical. Comfort used to muffle those questions. Retention turns the volume up. The first thing that happens is restlessness. Not mystical, not magical, just biological. Your system is energy with nowhere obvious to dump it. Energy without direction feels like anxiety. That's why so many men quit early and call the practice useless or dangerous. They mistake unused potential for a problem instead of a signal. The body is saying, move, build, confront. Comfort says, sit, scroll, sleep. The clash between those two voices is where the real work starts. Comfort is clever. It doesn't argue against improvement directly. It tells you discipline is extreme, that ambition is ego, that discomfort is unnecessary. It reminds you of people who failed, of risks that didn't pay off, of how nice it would feel to just relax. This part of you is not evil. It evolved to conserve energy, to avoid danger, to keep you alive in a world where calories were scarce and threats were constant. The problem is that modern life turned that survival mechanism into a permanent brake. Retention removes one of the strongest ways you've been pulling that brake. Without the old release patterns, you start noticing time. Hours stretch, evenings feel longer. You become aware of how much of your life was structured around soothing yourself. This is uncomfortable because it reveals choice. You can't blame exhaustion when you're not actually tired. You can't blame stress when what you feel is boredom mixed with fear. Fear of starting, fear of failing, fear of finding out you're capable of more and still choosing less. Comfort thrives on plausible excuses. Retention burns them off. There's also memory. When the nervous system isn't constantly sedated, it brings up unresolved material, old regrets, missed chances, conversations you avoided, versions of yourself you abandoned. This isn't punishment. It's integration. The mind wants coherence. When you stop drowning it in stimulation, it tries to clean house. That's why people describe this phase as facing their shadow, their past, their flaws. In simple terms, you're just finally alone with yourself without anesthetic. Comfort hates that. Comfort noise. It wants distraction layered on distraction, so you never have to sit in silence long enough to feel the itch to change. Retention turns silence into a mirror. You see where you've been lazy, where you've been dishonest, where you've been shrinking to fit other people's expectations. That can feel brutal, but it's also clarifying. You can't fix what you refuse to see. Physiologically, there's another layer. The body learns patterns. When pleasure is instant and frequent, the brain downregulates sensitivity. Normal life feels dull. Remove the constant spikes and sensitivity slowly returns. Food tastes stronger. Music hits deeper. Physical training feels more intense. But so do negative emotions. Sadness, frustration, anger, they all come back online. Comfort told you these were problems to eliminate. In reality, They're data. They tell you when something in your life is misaligned. This is where the showdown becomes a choice instead of a reaction. You can try to rebuild comfort through substitutes. Endless scrolling, junk food, constant entertainment, overwork that looks productive but avoids real risk. Or you can aim the energy somewhere that actually changes your trajectory. Strength training is a classic outlet because it converts restless energy into measurable progress. Creative work does the same for the mind. Hard conversations do it for relationships. None of these feel comfortable at first. That's the point. Comfort promises safety, but it delivers stagnation. Discipline promises discomfort, but it delivers momentum. Retention doesn't magically make you disciplined. It just removes a major escape hatch. You still have to choose. That's why it feels confrontational. You're no longer negotiating with the world. You're negotiating with yourself. The part of you that loves comfort will try to sabotage quietly. Miss one workout, delay one project, justify one exception. Over time, those exceptions become the rule. What's interesting is how identity shifts during this process. When you're constantly indulging, your sense of self is fragile. You need external validation, constant reassurance, frequent pleasure. When you practice restraint, even imperfectly, you build evidence that you can tolerate discomfort without breaking. That evidence compounds. Confidence stops being a mood and starts being a record. You remember that you chose the harder option and survived. Comfort has less leverage over someone who knows that. This doesn't mean becoming joyless or ascetic. Real comfort isn't the absence of challenge. It's the trust that you can handle challenge. There's a difference between rest and avoidance. Rest restores you, so you can act again. Avoidance drains you while pretending to soothe. Retention tends to expose which one you've been practicing. If your rest leaves you dull and heavy, it wasn't rest. It was sedation. The showdown intensifies when you realize how much of culture is built around selling comfort. Endless feeds, autoplay notifications engineered to keep you passive. None of this is accidental. Attention is currency. A man who can sit with discomfort, delay gratification, and direct his energy is hard to control. That's not conspiracy. It's economics and psychology. Retention is disruptive not because of mysticism, but because it interrupts a consumption loop. At some point, the internal dialogue changes. The voice of comfort still speaks, but it sounds repetitive, predictable. You recognize its scripts. Meanwhile, another voice grows clearer. The one that wants to test limits, to create something meaningful, to see what happens if you stop playing small. This voice doesn't promise ease. It promises growth. Growth is inherently uncomfortable because it stretches capacity. Muscles grow by tearing slightly and rebuilding. Skills grow by exposing incompetence and correcting it. Character grows by choosing long-term integrity over short-term relief. There's also humility in this process. Retention doesn't make you superior. It makes you aware of how much you relied on crutches. That awareness can soften arrogance and sharpen focus at the same time. You stop posturing and start practicing. You stop talking about potential and start dealing with behavior. Comfort loves talk because talk feels like progress without requiring risk. Action threatens comfort because action produces results, and results remove excuses. Eventually, the showdown resolves into a truce of sorts. Comfort doesn't disappear. It gets redefined. Comfort becomes earned rest after effort, quiet satisfaction after progress. The calm that comes from alignment rather than avoidance. You still enjoy life, but enjoyment stops being the primary organizing principle. Purpose takes that role. Not grand, abstract purpose, but daily purpose. Train, build, learn, contribute, repeat. The strange irony is that by confronting the part of you that loves comfort, you end up with a deeper, more stable form of it. The kind that doesn't vanish when stimulation stops. The kind that sits in your chest as confidence, not in your hands as a device. Retention is just one lever that forces this confrontation. The lever matters less than the direction it points you. In the end, the practice isn't about denial. It's about discernment. What pleasures actually enrich your life, and which ones quietly hollow it out. What discomforts are destructive, and which ones are invitations to grow. The showdown answers those questions not with theory, but with experience. You feel the pull of comfort. You feel the cost of giving in. You feel the strength that comes from holding steady. That's the real transformation. Not energy myths, not dramatic claims, but the simple, demanding act of staying present. When comfort begs you to disappear, when you can do that, even imperfectly, you stop being ruled by your weakest impulses. You become someone who chooses, not someone who reacts. And that shift, once it happens, doesn't need hype. It speaks for itself in how you move, how you work, how you live.